Hey guys, so this is middle school and today we're going to add integers. So whatever your page was, I stopped on page 5. I'm going to go to page 7. Page 6 is on, so here was our compare and order integers. Page 6 is on the back and I have tape and stuff on the back there. So I'm going to go ahead and go to page, 7. Okay, let's erase that so it looks better. So I'm going to go to page 7 and I'm going to write my objective. Please make sure that you have it here though. We're going to write, I can add integers. And remember, integers were positive whole numbers, negative whole numbers, and 0. Okay? I can add integers and we're going to put the date right here. Okay? And then on page 7 in the center, I'm going to write, and you are too, I can add integers. Okay, I can add integers. So last week we got a number line in our notebook and we used a number line to add integers. We also had yellow and red chips that we used to add integers. And we're going to practice more with those. But I want us to look at what happens when we had those. Because we can add integers using absolute value, which is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to do a couple of examples with you, and then you're going to do a few on your own. So if I have, let's say as an example, -3 plus -6. Okay, so on the number line, we would start at 0, and we'd jump to -3, and then we go -6 more places. Okay, so we have two rules here. Let's do this. So rule 1, the signs are the same. Signs are same. That means we're adding them and they're both positive, or in this case, they're both negative. -3 plus -6. So if they're both positive or they're both negative, I can add and keep the sign. I can add and keep the sign. So -3 plus -6, I add them together. 6 plus 3 is 9. They're both negatives and I keep that negative sign. And if you do it with chips or you do it with the number line, you get the same answer. Okay? So if you have 5 plus 6, they're both positives. So we just add them together and keep the sign. They're both positives. It's going to be 11 positive. Okay? Another example would be -4 plus -3. Okay? They're both negatives. Okay? They have the same, signs are the same. So same, add and keep the sign. So 4 plus 3 is 7. They're both negative, so I keep the negative sign. Okay? That's rule number 1. And I'm going to highlight that in my notebook because it's important. Okay? So example 1 goes with rule number 1. Example 2 is going to go with, let's call that example 1. Example 2 is going to go with rule 2. So rule number 2, signs different. So that means one of them is a positive and the other one is negative. Or maybe the first one's negative and the second one's positive, but the signs are different. We're going to take the difference, or we're going to subtract and take sign of bigger absolute value. Whoops, value, UE there on the end. Okay, so that's going to look like this. So subtract and take the sign of the bigger absolute value. So let's say we have -3 plus 6. Okay, the signs are different. One of them is negative and one of them is positive. So I'm going to subtract. I'm going to take the difference. What is the difference between 6 and 3? 6 minus 3 is 3. And do I have more negatives or more positives? I have more positives, so my answer is going to be positive. And you don't have to put the little plus sign in front. If there's nothing there, we know it's a plus. Okay? Let's say we have 5 plus negative 6. 5 plus negative 6. So one of them is a positive and one of them is different. So that's rule number 2. They're different, so I'm going to take the difference or subtract. 6 minus 5 is 1. Do I have more positives or more negatives? I have more negatives, so it's going to be negative 1. Okay? And the last one, let's say I have negative 4 plus 3. Okay? That follows rule number 2 because the signs are different. One has negative, one has positive. If they're different, I take the difference, I subtract them. 4 minus 3 is 1. I have more negatives than positives, so it's going to be negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do, let's do one more thing. Let's do example 3. Okay, example 3 is I have to evaluate. Evaluate with integers. Okay, so with integers. Okay, so an example would look something like A equals 6, B equals negative 4, and C equals negative 1. Okay, and then they may tell you A plus B. Okay, so I take what A is and I substitute it in for A, and I take what B is and I substitute it for B, and then I figure out, is that rule number 1 or rule number 2? Okay, so A plus B would be 6 plus negative 4. Is that rule number 1 or rule number 2? Are they both signs the same? This one's positive and this one's negative. So they're different. Rule number 2, so I'm going to subtract. 6 minus 4 is 2. Do I have more positives or more negatives? I have more positives, so it's going to be a positive 2. Okay. B might say B plus C. So I take what B is and I substitute it in for B, and I take what C is and I substitute it in for C. So I have negative 4 plus negative 1. And then I check, is that rule number 1 or rule number 2? Well, negative and a negative, they're the same. So I'm going to add them together. 4 plus 1 is 5, and I'm going to keep the sign. It's a negative. So negative 5 is my answer for that one. Okay? So those are the only 3 types of things you're going to have except for word problems, and we'll work on word problems together. Okay? So go ahead and do your worksheet for this page. Okay, guys, I hope this makes sense. Thanks.